to use adrenaline to maximize your basketball game. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategy.
I need that, going to the maximum. Godspeed ahead, no man alive is catching. A force to be reckoned with, adrenaline's my acronym. Verb, noun, or adjective, say the word and let's begin.
Today we're talking about using adrenaline to take your game to the next level. The idea for this video came because I was watching the Netflix documentary Sprint about the Olympic sprinters. And as I do when I'm watching documentaries like that, I'm trying to figure out why and how. Except for that documentary is more about the stories, the life stories of the actual sprinters themselves. It's not really about like how they train and what they do to get better. That's what I was looking for. That's not really what they talked about. So as I was watching the documentary, I started thinking to myself, I wonder what they do. I wonder what it is, how they train to make themselves, to get themselves to that kind of elite level. And while I was thinking about that, I found myself wondering about the possibility of them using adrenaline, because it makes sense that they, as they're in the 100 or 200 meter sprint, you would probably want to use adrenaline to try to fuel that run. And then of course I thought about, well, I wonder how I could then relate that to basketball. And then it did occur to me that I did used to use adrenaline on a pretty regular basis a long time ago in my own competitive career. So today I'm going to give you examples of how I used to use adrenaline in my game to try to make myself better, and then hopefully you guys can extrapolate examples from that and think about how you could then use adrenaline to make your game better. So let's get right into using adrenaline. The examples I'm going to use are going to go from my least favorite way to use adrenaline to my most favorite way. So my least favorite way to use adrenaline would be during rebounding. So I'm 5'8". During my playing days, I was probably somewhere in the low to mid 130s, so I was always one of the smaller players out here. So rebounding was always one of my weakest, if not my weakest ability when it came to playing basketball. Now when it came to using adrenaline, it would be tempting to try to use it while I was trying to box out and get the right position to get a rebound. But the problem is adrenaline doesn't really make you stronger, and it definitely doesn't make you like taller or bigger. So using it for boxing out was tempting, but never was going to be practical. So instead, when I would use adrenaline for rebounding, it would be in situations where maybe I didn't have that great of a boxed out position, and so when the rebound would come, instead of being able to sort of secure it 100% the way you would optimally want to, instead, especially because I'm smaller, shorter than people, I would tip the ball back up into the air, trying to tip it away from the other team, trying to tip it to myself. And usually when doing that, you have to tip it 2 or 3 times up in the air and away from the defense or whatever position side of the ball you're playing. So that means you're jumping as high as you can, as explosively as you can, and then you're tipping it away. So that means you have to sprint to the next position to tip it again, jumping as explosively as you possibly can. And you're doing that 2 or 3 times within like a 7-second interval, which doesn't sound like much, but when you're doing that much intense sprinting and running in that small little amount of time, it can be very fatiguing. And so it's those kind of instances when I would call on adrenaline to make that a little bit easier on myself, give myself a little bit of advantage over other players. But better than that, more fun to me on defense when it comes to using adrenaline would be getting steals, especially sort of late game, very important possession kind of steal. So if it's point game for the other team and I'm on defense and I am guarding the ball handler, who's probably the best player on that team, probably the smartest player on that team, I'm playing up close to him as close as I possibly can. I'm playing very tight defense. I don't want him to have any space for a potential jump shot because it's point game, so I'm right up on him. He's smart, so he knows that if I'm that close, that he's going to try to pull some kind of fake move to try to get me to go one way, so then he can then go around me. And usually good offensive players have 1 or 2 go-to moves that they have in that kind of a situation. And I know he has that move. I know what he's trying to do, and so I'm waiting for him to do it. I'm being patient, and even regardless of how good or skilled offensive players are, even out here at the court, and well, especially out here at the park, they will usually somehow telegraph that they're about to do their move. right? So I wait for that telegraph, I wait for them to show me they're about to make their move, and then when I see they're about to make it, that's when I call on the adrenaline to try to flood my brain, because late game situation, last possession of the game possibly, I need to get the steal, so I try to slow down time. So I see he's about to make his move, I call on the adrenaline, time slows down, I can see him starting to make his move, I can see what he's trying to do, where he's trying to go. I can then choose how I go about sticking my hand in there, poking the ball away. I can choose how I poke it, where it goes, what direction it goes, so that I can be the person to go get the steal as I poke it away, because I can choose all this because time is slowed down in my brain. And so that's great. Like, if you can do that, if you can evoke that adrenaline at the right time to make that kind of a steal in that situation, that's all good. But the problem is, once you get the ball, once you've secured it, like if you're playing half court, you poke the ball away, you get the steal, you turn around to face the basket, at that point time catches back up, so it starts going at a regular pace again, because that slowing down effect can't last forever. It may be a second and a half, maybe 2 at the most. It can't last 4 or 5 seconds, but physically you still have the adrenaline probably flowing through your body, which means even though time has gone back to regular speed, your body is still flowing with adrenaline, which would mean that you are very apt and possibly in the position where you're going to make some kind of a mistake now, because that adrenaline has made you physically sort of frantic. When the adrenaline's going through your body, you got to move, you got to go, you got to do stuff, right? So you're probably going to make some kind of a mistake unless and until you can flat out that adrenaline. You can make it stop, you can make it disappear as quickly as possible. You need it to slow down time and make the steal, but as soon as you have the steal, you want it to go away completely so that you're not frantic, so that you don't make bad decisions. And again, I'm not saying this is something I did all the time or even on a regular basis. It was something that if it was a late game situation, if it needed to be done, I would try to evoke that adrenaline, and sometimes it would come, and sometimes time would slow down and I would be able to do what I just described. So while that was fun, using adrenaline to get steals in those kind of situations, while that's fun, my most favorite way to use adrenaline in basketball was on the offensive side. And it doesn't necessarily even come to scoring. You see, for me, since I was a pass-first point guard, I realized that I needed to develop my scoring abilities somehow. I couldn't just be one-dimensionally, stagnant on the court with only being able to affect the game offensively by passing. I also wanted to be at least a decent threat offensively when it came to scoring. And so to round out my game offensively, I decided my form of sort of playing the two guard, the shooting guard, would be in the vein of like a Ray Allen or Reggie Miller, in terms of moving without the basketball and trying to tire out my defender by running him around the court, running him into and around screens, and then getting, for me, an open jumper, which would be mid-range. I was a much better mid-range shooter than I was a long-range shooter. And I developed this in the early 2000s. I was lucky because I live in southeastern Michigan. The Detroit Pistons were dominating the NBA at that time, and my favorite player, Richard Hamilton, had that exact game. He had the Reggie Miller, Ray Allen off-the-ball running game, but he shot mid-range jumpers at the end of all that running. That's exactly what I started to do. I was also fortunate in the fact that my conditioning was always supreme out here. And if I had any kind of athletic talent at all, it would be that I had an endless gas tank. I had endless energy. That doesn't mean I was hyper or frantic or anything like that. And it didn't mean like I didn't have to ever catch my breath, because I did. I would run under breath and I would have to catch it from time to time. But in terms of my energy level dipping, that would never happen. I was always just at 100% energy, which means I could always put out 100% sprint when I was running around the court. That meant that when a defender was chasing me, most defenders don't want to chase anybody. They don't like playing defense at all in the first place, but they certainly don't want to be chasing a dude around a court. So most of the time during my runs, I wouldn't have to use the adrenaline. But sometimes when you would come across very like-minded players who were in good condition, had great conditioning, were very agile like I was, and they would actually keep up with me, which was rare, but they would do it. It was in those situations that I would like to use the adrenaline, just to give myself a little bit more space than normal. Because if they're staying with me as I'm sprinting around the court and I need a little space to come off a curl and get my jumper, well, as I was coming into that curl, that's when I would hit that adrenaline to make him, my defender, run into that screen. I curl around, and because that defender is so agile and athletic and I'm not used to that, he's getting tired, I'm probably getting tired too by the time I get to the end of that play. It's at the end when I come to that screen that I let that adrenaline hit, so I would create that little bit of space between him and I. He runs into the screen, I curl around it, and now because I'm tired, like I'm fatigued at the end of that run, because I have adrenaline still coursing through my system, as I catch the ball and as I go for my jumper, instead of putting up like a weak-legged jumper or a tired jumper or a jumper that's going to be short, like if I put up that kind of a jumper after sprinting all around the court all that time and tiring out myself and my defender, I at least want to put up a good quality shot. So I would use adrenaline at the end of that run to make sure that when I shoot that shot, it's nice and strong, I have nice good power, nice good control. I would use the adrenaline for that. That was my favorite way to use adrenaline out here on the court, just because it was fun. It made the game fun. It was fun to me to try to tire out my defender. Seeing them get tired when I wasn't was one of the funnest parts of the basketball game to me. I was a pass first point guard. Making good passes through traffic was gratifying. There was like a appreciation there for that, but it wasn't nearly as fun to me as having a defender chase me and him get tired and I don't, and then the play end with me making a good strong jump shot and using adrenaline, manipulating adrenaline so that I could have a good jump shot to end the play. Now let's talk about how you get this adrenaline, because I know I'm making it sound like I just kind of like consciously like grabbed it and used it whenever I wanted to, but that's not the way it is or the way it was, because adrenaline is very limited. It's not something that you can just use all game, every game, whenever you want to. But I am open to the possibility that maybe that's another kind of weird talent I may have had, which is maybe I'm just more apt to having and using and manipulating adrenaline more than the average player. I don't know if that's the case, but I'm open to the possibility of it. But even if that is a weird talent that very few players like myself have, I would say that for any player, probably the closest way you can get to that environment where adrenaline is kind of readily available for you, I would say that's why I emphasize on this channel that fun and enjoyment is so important. Because the way I thought about it was my love and passion for the game that allowed me to have and use that adrenaline. Meaning, like, when I'm out here, I'm not just going through the motions. Like, I want to be the best basketball player I can be, but I'm doing it because I love it. I love the process. I love the curiosity of it, to see what I can do, how I can do it, if I can do it. I love that whole process. It is a passion for me. I'm not just going through the motions because I'm comparing myself to other players out here. I am endlessly, lovingly, obsessively curious about what can I do? What am I capable of out here? And so back in the day, the whole adrenaline thing started when I would be out here practicing, probably by myself, and I would do something, or I would experience something, a good jumper or something that would kind of make me feel good. Maybe it would kind of give me goosebumps because it's like, wow, it's cool. I did the thing that I didn't know if I could do, and I actually did it, and I did it on purpose. And that would excite me. You know, it would kind of give me goosebumps, and I would pay attention to that. To me, it was like goosebumps, the stuff that gives you goosebumps, whether on the basketball court or in life, goosebumps to me are kind of the precursor to adrenaline. It's like, the way I looked at it was like, goosebumps like build up your reservoir of adrenaline, so that you can then use the adrenaline later on. You don't get those goosebumps if you don't actually enjoy, if you're not actually into what you're doing. So in practice, I would notice occasionally I would get the goosebumps, Okay, great. Then I would notice like, okay, it feels like there's something in here, another gear, another level that I can get to. How do I reach that? How do I use it? And what I came to understand through endless hours of experimentation was, oh, that's adrenaline. I just have to figure out how to use it. How do I personally sort of access that and be able to bring it out and use it on the court? And I would have never realized that if it weren't for my endless hours of fun, obsessive experimentation that I had out here at the court. And that I would just experiment with like, okay, how do I feel when I do this or that? Do I get the goosebumps? Do I feel like I have another level, another gear that I can go to when I do this or that on the court? When do I feel it? And then in the moments that I feel it, how can I then trigger that adrenaline to come out and be able to use it? And it was just a trial and error process that happened over hours and hours and hours and probably months, if not years of experimentation out here on the court. And I eventually did get to the point where I would be in game competition in certain situations. I would know, okay, this is the moment. I can use adrenaline right here, right now, if I so choose to, because I can go to that place inside of me where I allow myself to sort of enjoy the moment enough where the goosebumps then sort of trigger the adrenaline for usage. If you've never really experienced it, I don't know how it sounds to someone who hasn't done it, but that's kind of the best way I can describe how you can actually use it. It's kind of like being in the zone, except for you can't be in the actual zone all game, every game. So it's kind of like keeping yourself like mentally and almost like emotionally close to being in the zone. So the zone's over here, you're not there, you're not in it, you're not touching it yet, but you're really close to it. You're close enough so that when you want that adrenaline, you can kind of reach out and just touch the zone just a little bit, just for that very split second. You touch the zone, you get the adrenaline, you bring it back, and then you use it just for that split second. That's kind of the best way I can describe how you can be readily close to and being able to manipulate adrenaline. That being said, do whatever you can to enjoy the game to your maximum intensity possible. So whatever it is about you that you enjoy the game, that makes the game fun and sort of like your life passion, put that on display out here. Don't hide it. Like I've seen many players throughout the years who act very hard, very serious. You know, they're very serious hardcore players. They can't ever show happy, fun emotions like they actually enjoy themselves out here. They have to act like they're super hard all the time. Like that's fine, but this is supposed to be fun and enjoyable. That's why we do it. If you want access to that adrenaline, if you want access to being as close as possible to being in the zone so you can reach out and touch it from time to time, if not actually get into it, allow yourself to enjoy the game. However works best for you. Like, you want to be as close to basketball ecstasy as often as possible as you can. So behave however you need to behave out here for you to feel that basketball enjoyment, that ecstasy. I know it sounds weird and strange, but that's kind of what this channel is. The bottom line is like, if you want access to that adrenaline, if you want to be close to that basketball zone, you got to figure out what is it about this that you love. And then put yourself as close to that love as you possibly can by behaving and demonstrating. Allow yourself to feel and enjoy that love as much and as often as you possibly can. It makes everything easier out here, and it's just more fun. So just figure out what that is for you and then be yourself out here. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't hide and try to be hard and try to, like, you know, fake like you're this tough guy or you're some alpha male out here. Just do what you love, how you love to do it, as often as possible. That'll give you access to the zone. That'll give you access to that adrenaline. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it helpful at all, if you think it's going to help you to play the game with more controlled adrenaline, then please subscribe to the channel. And let me know down in the comments, how do you use adrenaline out here? And let everybody else know who doesn't have experience yet, like, how long did it take you to be able to understand how and when to actually use adrenaline out here properly to help elevate your game? But before you do comment, make sure you hit that thanks button down below, because not only does hitting that thanks button highlight every comment you make it stand out from all the other comments, but it also directly supports the channel. So for anyone that does hit that thanks button, know I genuinely appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment, like I said. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any video goes live on this channel. And until then, see you guys next week.
All of a minute, glory to gain. Yeah, I'm in it to win it. Adrenaline in the veins.